And hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, that's Paul Cheon. And if you're just joining us, you have come at just the right time here, because this is where we fill out those last few seats for the top 8. This is with everything on the line, the tension in the feature match area. You can cut it with a knife. It is very thick. Let's get down there right now. Take a look. That is your main floor here in round number 16. But as we transition over to the big lights, the cameras, and of course the big stage here, you see our main feature match area where we have two players about to battle it out. Right there, you're looking at Oscar Christensen from Denmark, 11-3-1 is Oscar's record playing Sultai Food. That is Eliott Boussaud from France, also with Sultai Food, 11-2-2 is his record. What that means here, Paul, is this what we have, what we call a clean win and in. The winner of this match is going to be in the top 8, the loser will not. It is that simple, and they are playing, well, calling this a mirror, not so much. Interestingly, Eliott, during play testing, was trying out a Fae of Wishes deck, and he found that he kept on searching up Casualties of War over and over again, and he's just decided, you know what? Why don't we just put a bunch of these in the main deck here of this Sultai Food deck? This is what I always want anyway. He's playing full 4 copies.
Wow. And a card that's missing that most people have been playing 3 to 4 copies of? No, Once Upon a Time. That is really interesting.
If you've been following Standard, that is jaw-dropping. Like,
it is the most played card in the entire tournament.
Exactly. He's given up consistency in lieu of raw late-game power, and we're going to find out during this match if it worked out for him, at least here. Now, for Oscar, he's running a more, I don't know, you call it stock version, right? There's a few flex slots, we call them. Those are the spots that are outside of that sort of core package of food-based cards, you know, the Gilded Gooses and the Okos and that kind of thing. And let's find out who's going to win. Is it going to be the more standardized deck list, or is it going to be go big or go home in the hands of Eliott? Right now, well, he didn't turbo it out, but he did produce a turn 3 Oko. So he's got to be happy with that. He passes the turn back to Oscar, though. And let's see if Oscar can fight back here, perhaps with the 1 copy of Vraska Golgari Queen he has in his deck. Maybe if he's fortunate enough to have that in his hand.
Looks like he's got an Assassin's Trophy. He actually split the difference. Most decks running 2 copies of Vraska, but he's playing 1 Vraska and 1 Assassin's Trophy instead.
That's right. That's an untapped Watery Grave, so we're going to see something here. Is it just going to be his own Oko? Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
And the question here is he going to apply pressure to the Oko, or is he just going to keep it back? Because if he does attack, that does leave that Paradise Druid open to cards like Wicked Wolf that Eliott might play on curve.
And if you've watched this matchup a lot, which you probably have, you'll know that the players will often prioritize going after opposing mana creatures at this stage in the game to try to stunt their development. Oscar having none of it, though. He's just going to make a food and pass a turn and leaving his Paradise Druid safely in hexproof mode here. Though it does look like Eliott wants to start applying pressure to the opposing Oko, so he's going to turn that food into an Elk and attack, and Oscar says, sure, you got it. There's 3 loyalty gone. Of course, one of the many very powerful things about Oko is the very high loyalty that you get with 2 different plus abilities, including a +2. It just means that attacks like this are unlikely to be able to take Oko off the battlefield. It's a more long-term effort.
Yeah, looks like Eliott.
Go from Eliott?
It looks like Eliott was a bit flooded there. He had a bunch of lands, a second Oko, and a negate.
So he's going to have to settle for leaving negate up here?
Yeah, and negate also kind of Eliott with a more unusual build of this deck, right? Negate is typically not a card that you see in the main, and Eliott has that 1 in, along with the full 4 copies of Casualties of War, along with a singular Massacre Girl. What's also interesting about that is the fact that Massacre Girl is nicer when you do play cards like Once Upon a Time, as it gives you a card that you can search for with Once Upon a Time, so you don't need to play as many copies, and it's a permanent. However, again, Eliott choosing not to play Once Upon a Time, playing some more top-end threats, and playing 2 additional copies of Growth Spiral to help kind of ramp into the the expensive spells in his deck.
It's a bold move.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's been paying off for him quite well. Oscar Christensen, though, is fighting back nicely here. He's going to play Wicked Wolf, sacrifice a food with a trigger on the stack, and take out the 3/3 elk on the other side of the battlefield. Once again, he does have a decision that he could make here with regards to attacking Oko with his Paradise Druid, though he's decided against it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's really all that concerned about that Oko on the other side of the battlefield. I mean, Eliott can make a food. He can maybe go for a swap, but there's not even a creature that he can steal here. So really just preserving Paradise Druid, recognizing that what's really important in this matchup is making sure you have that mana, and also just making sure you can keep that Wicked Wolf alive. And things continue to be a bit awkward here for Boussaud. He drew a Hydrate Crisis, but he's kind of 1 mana away from that sweet spot. You really want to get to the land number 6 to be able to draw 2 cards with the Crisis.
Well, Elliott's going to take care of the Wicked Wolf on the other side of the battlefield by turning it into an elk. Of course, worth noting here that the +1/+1 counter stays, so this is a 4/4 elk.
And Boussaud needs to find some action. He might just run out of 3/3 Crisis here. Nope, he's going to wait. Feels pretty bad to run it out.
He really wants that value.
Oh, yeah. he does.
It's a whole extra card, another life. It really does matter. Also, again, you mentioned it before, but he can sit back on negate here and potentially get something like Nissa or something like that, which he's going to be concerned about anyway.
Yeah, one of the issues with a card like negate is just the fact that, you know, if Oscar is aware of the fact that Eliott has that card in hand, and, you know, Eliott has a bunch of cards. What could he possibly have? You could be thinking, okay, well, one of those cards might be the negate. So what can you do? You can still just run out a bunch of creatures. You have really powerful top-end threats like Hydrate Crisis, which negate won't die to, or even just running out more Wicked Wolves.
It is funny, too, and I really do like this from Eliott. He has 1 negate, and it's in the main deck. And, you know, all throughout the whole tournament, the players exchange deck lists when they sit down. It's the first card listed on his deck list. That might not even be a mistake. And he just wants you to think about it, right? Do you want to respect the fact that I could have a negate here? And as you said, a lot of times they can just play around it pretty easily. But there's some situations where having just that 1 card actually gets you more value than you even bargained for, because people will play around it. And by the way, here is Nissa who shakes the world, and realistically, that's about the best thing he can use.
Oh, absolutely.
A negate on, and there it is. The main deck 1 of negate gets there for Eliott Boussaud.
So now Oscar can finish off the Oko that's on the battlefield here. He can get in and attack for, it looks like 9 damage.
Attack. Attack Oko.
Attack Oko, says Oscar. And finally, Oko leaves, but there is a replacement in hand, though, as you mentioned before, what the setup seems here more likely is for a big Hydrate Crisis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this seems like the best opportunity here. Play out a Crisis, try to find some additional interaction, maybe some Noxious Grasps, Casualties of War. Very likely to find that at some point, right? He went up to the full 4 copies of that card.
Yeah, you could see a world here where he casts a Hydrate Crisis for 4, maybe finds a Casualties of War, and next turn can start deploying those.
And, you know, there are metagames where you're like, well, that's just too many expensive cards in your deck. But if coming in, if you expect most of the field to be on kind of these slower mid-range food decks, then all of a sudden you have kind of what many consider to be the trump card in this matchup. Many people play 1 to 2 copies, and he's like, you know what? I don't want to mess around. I'm going to play all 4.
I love the idea. I just don't think I get my head around not playing Once Upon a Time.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would be like, I can't replace Once Upon a Times with 6 drops. Obviously, you had to, you know, change some land things around in addition to that. But that's just how my brain would equate it. I just can't imagine not playing it in the format.
Also, one of the issues with playing too many cards like Casualties of War, you do kind of get that surprise factor or that edge game 1. But after Sideboard, most of these decks are playing 3 copies at least of Veil of Summer, and all of a sudden you get to negate a powerful 6-mana spell with just 1 mana.
And we're going to see the Wicked Wolf come down, eat the food, and in the process, eat the Hydroid Crisis. And that could clear the way for a bunch of damage here for Oscar Christensen as well. And, you know, as we've been talking about it, Eliott, he's going to need to find some big stuff here. We're not talking about, hey, that could be cool. He's fallen way behind on board, as you can see, and is going to need to start cleaning this up and quickly. May even just be too far behind at this point, Paul.
Yeah. Massacre Girl would be a card. That would certainly help. If he draws Massacre Girl, there are 2 Paradise Druids in play, which would then give you enough triggers to basically wipe out the entire board. So that would be a start if he could find the singular Massacre Girl that he has in the main.
He did find the singular negate. Why not find the singular Massacre Girl, although he doesn't have it in his hand currently. So he's going to play Gilded Goose, make a food. Then what?
Probably Oko, make a blocker.
Okay. There we go. And another blocker. So this was a big turn here for Boussaud. And while he didn't completely swing this game back in his favor, he at least put up some resistance to buy himself a little more time.
Yeah, but Oscar just has more removal here. There is a Noxious Grasp. Also remember, he's been holding that Assassin's Trophy for the entire game, so not sure if, let's see, he's got a Wicked Wolf, 2 Elk, and 2 Paradise Druids in play, which would mean that he has total of 14 damage.
15, right? One of the Elks has a counter.
Oh, you're correct. So 11, 15 damage. If he kills everything,
it's lethal.
It's lethal. And the thing is, he could trade the Paradise Druid after tapping it with the Oko that's in play and steal one of the creatures in play as well.
Oh, sure.
So I think he sees it, and I think he's probably just kind of making sure he goes through the numbers, but just double checking. You get to kill an Elk here. You Assassin's Trophy the Gilded Goose. Well, no. I guess that wouldn't work because the Paradise Druid has Hexproof.
Yeah, that is actually what's preventing it. But still, you got to feel like Oscar could send in a devastating attack here. And even if it doesn't actually kill Eliott this turn, probably means that Eliott has to just cold rip the Massacre Girl just to stay in the game.
However, if he does, I mean, he might be right back in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
As crazy as it is, these are all coming at Boussaud.
So this is a lethal attack. So Eliott does need to make some blocks here.
And it will be interesting to see how Eliott maneuvers these blocks, because if this situation has come to the point that Massacre Girl is the only out, he needs to make sure that he leaves the board state such that if he draws Massacre Girl, enough triggers will go on the stack to actually wipe the board. Now, with a bunch of Paradise Druids, that's pretty easy. But here, you know, if you trade off a couple of them, it could, you know, lose your goose. He wouldn't actually have enough. So he's got to be careful just to keep that in mind.
So if he blocks the Wicked Wolf, he will take 11 damage and go down to 2. Keep in mind, the other Wicked Wolf has been turned into an Elk, so it's simply a 4/4. Can't sacrifice any food there to make that one bigger.
All right, block like this, he says.
So you take 11, down to 2.
Oscar doing our job for us. And he just says go. So this really needs to be Massacre Girl, realistically, if Boussaud's going to have a chance to fight back into this game.
Yes. Casualties of War will not do it here.
Not even close. Let's see if he can draw it. It was a land. It certainly wasn't Massacre Girl.
Yeah, and that should do it for this game.
He really needed to see that one of come off the top of the library here. Yeah, he has a Gilded Goose. He can block, make a food, sack the food, but he has fallen so far behind that anything incremental like that is not even close to good enough. He can make 2 foods. One with the Goose, one with the Oko.
So he can gain 6 life.
Go to 8.
After a block.
Yeah.
But that's still not enough, right?
No, it's not. It is not.
Oscar can animate the other food that he has in play.
Yeah, he doesn't even need it, but sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, Boussaud says, I'm going to make you do it.
I think it's really important for Boussaud, though, to realize, I mean, he's already got 2 draws here. He does need to make sure that he can give himself as much time as possible to win this match. These matchups go long, and if you're dead on board, you should really try to finish the match as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate going through the motions and being, really making sure that that everything is as it seems. But this is a situation where this whole turn cycle he could have saved the time on.
Absolutely.
By just conceding. He knows he's going to lose. He didn't even need the Noxious Grasp there, so it was on board. And as you said, with 2 draws, I mean, we have players in the room that don't have 2 draws in their career, at this level. You get 2 draws in there, you want to make sure that 3rd draw really not great for him. As it stands, I don't think it's going to be an issue. That game didn't take a super long time. It was a typical drawn-out game, but he needs to win 2 more games here, and he wants to put himself in the position to be able to do that comfortably.
Yeah, again, it could definitely come up. I've seen games go to distance. I mean, I've seen games go up to 40 minutes, individual games, just because if both players get those reasonable draws without enough interaction, all of a sudden, both sides just have armies of 3/3s on the battlefield, and oftentimes a game could just be decided by a Planeswalker ultimate going off. And in those games, I mean, every single minute counts. And again, neither of these players are going to be doing themselves any favors if they pick up a draw here. They need to win this to make it into the top 8.
Yeah, and this format has produced some long games in Sultai Mirrors like what we have here. I mean, we even saw, I noticed on Twitter Ben Stark had picked up a draw. That's something I don't think I've ever seen him get a draw. He plays very quickly and he will push, hey, we need to make sure we do this when he needs to. So, yeah, got to be careful with those. But again, hopefully we'll be able to get through this one with no draw in sight for these players. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll be right back down into the feature match area with more action from round 16 here from Mythic Championship VI. Don't go anywhere.
No, in general, I like enjoying new formats, new spaces, new stuff, and well, that's Pioneer is landed in a very sweet spot where there is not a lot of stuff that's very strong, that's traditionally broken in Magic, like ritual effects and free spells, etc. That's not really all that present in the format. So these types of things typically invalidate a lot of cards that are more suited for games that are going to go a little bit more mid-rangey. So it seems like by its nature the format is both bigger than standard, and there's a lot of the cards are going to be viable because there's no essentially no stack-based combo that polishes a lot of mid-range cards in formats like Modern or Legacy. So it's really interesting to see for me how it's going to develop, and it's really cool. I like playing it, and it's fun.
My thoughts on Pioneer is that playing Saheeli Cat was absolutely awesome, and now that that's gone, I'm loving Sultai mid-range decks that allow you to just have some fun, play Oko in a format where it's not banned, and control the board state and go over the top of everyone.
So the Pioneer format is brand new. I've been trying not to think about it. It's been really, really hard to not get sucked into that while I'm preparing for this tournament. So I actually am really looking forward to having this tournament behind me and being able to dive in there, because I like exploring, what to do in this new format. What are the top players and what are their weaknesses? And so I think I'm going to plan on waiting a little bit for the dust to settle in terms of which cards are going to show up and which cards are going to be successful, which cards are going to get banned. Once the dust is settled, I look to kind of see how do I attack those decks that are rising to the top. And so I'm looking forward to that. Haven't done it yet, but it's exciting to think about Pioneer.
Yeah. Pioneer is very cool format. Unfortunately, I didn't have too much time to practice for it, but I have this cool idea in my hand that is Mono Blue Devotion. I made 2 Channel Fireball video with Mono Blue Devotion. So that's definitely a deck that I can't wait to sleeve it up in paper and play.
And welcome back to the feature match area here in Richmond. We're here for Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got round 16 action, and if this is your first time watching a Mythic Championship like this is the last round before we cut to top 8. And that means that a lot of the feature matches we have here are actually win-in-ins. Now, the one that we're popping in on here is Gregor Kowalski on the right there against Steven Tuchek. And this is Teamer Reclamation in the hands of Steven. Gregor's is playing Jeskai Fires. So not a matchup that would define the tournament, but cool that we get to see it. Now, I will mention here, though, that Kowalski, while technically in contention for top 8 with a win, he would need to get in on tiebreakers, and Max Mick, who's playing at a side table against Andrei Strosky, if he were to win his, would have the same record as Kowalski, but currently has better tiebreakers by a pretty significant amount. It would be quite difficult for Kowalski's to jump him, but I mean, obviously you're going to play it out.
Right.
You know, there's still big prize money for him on the line and an outside chance. He needs a whole heck of a lot of things to go right, though.
And of course, Kowalski, member of the MPL, means that every single Mythic point that he picks up is extremely important, because if you stay within the top 20 of the 32 members currently in the MPL, you make it back into the MPL for next season. So, huge match for Kowalski on multiple different angles. And even if he wins, even if he gets 9th, you know, again, finishing with a 12-4 record would give you a substantial number of Mythic points.
Yeah, it's interesting because we get so focused on the top 8 at this point in the tournament, but a top 16 has huge ramifications, and the big tournament is also a nice payday as well, and a very respectable finish. You know, when you hang out with professional players enough, you know, they talk about top 16s like, oh, wow, you know, like you top 16 the Pro Tour, you top 16 the Mythic Championship. Like, that's a career achievement. Yeah, sure, it's not a top 8. It's not one of those ones that we put up on the big placard, but it gets respect from the pro community. It looks like, by the way, our main feature match is ready to go. So let's pop up back there and see if Oscar Christensen can finish off Eliott Boussaud, or if Boussaud can start mounting a comeback here. He's got to win 2 games in a row in this matchup. This is Sultai Mirror, but we use that term loosely here because the players have actually built their decks pretty differently from each other.
Yeah, very interested in how both of the players sideboarded. Given that we know about the 4x copies of Casualties of War in Eliott's deck, you have to imagine Oscar is going to be bringing in either some counter spells and Negate and Disdainful Stroke, or those 3 copies of Veil of Summer that he has as well. I also see 2 copies.
Starts.
I also see 2 copies of Liliana Dreadhorde General. That is also a nice card. If you think Casualties of War no longer becomes an effective sideboard card because of the fear of cards like Veil of Summer, you might want to swap that in with Liliana Dreadhorde General there instead. Wow. Boussaud kept a glacially slow hand here. He's got 2 Hydrate Crazies and a Veil of Summer in hand.
Oh, no.
Wow.
That's super
That's
slow.
a very, like, if Oscar had anything resembling a reasonable quick start, I mean, he would be in some trouble here.
He'd be taking damage right now.
Is this an Oko?
If it is, I like Oscar Christensen's chances from here, because we're probably going to have to see a Baby Crisis next turn from Boussaud. And he's going to go ahead and crack this Fabled
I
Passage.
just don't think you can keep hands like this in this matchup. It's really important to either have early interaction, cards like Noxious Crest to deal with your opponent's potential turn 2 Oko, or have some acceleration so that you can run out your threats in time. So that one felt a little questionable to me, because I think, you know, with the mulligans, you know, with the London Mulligan, you just have the option of just having so many stronger starting hands than what Eliott has right now.
Yeah, right now, Eliott is actually considering probably just firing off Veil of Summer to draw a card on end step, because it's starting to look like he's going to be tapping out for these Crazies, at least for the next turn or 2. He found a Wicked Wolf off the top of the library, but maybe he still just wants to do a Crasis first. Yeah, there's no food going. There's nothing to hit with it. So he's just going to make the Baby Crasis the 2/2 flyer and draw a card. And he did find Oko, so maybe the card's starting to come together a bit for him. And he was fortunate that Oscar didn't have that super quick start. So maybe for Boussaud to get back in this thing. That said, There is an Oko on the other side of the battlefield, and that already puts Boussaud behind, especially considering that Christensen could have something great here.
18.
And wow, Christensen has lots of Noxious Grasps in hand. It looks like he has 3 copies.
He's not going to even bother with the Hydroid Krasis, it seems.
Right. Not too concerned about the
Ooh.
loyalty count.
That was a Nissa Who Shakes the World as well now for Boussaud. So, boy, from when we checked in on that hand, it has improved dramatically.
Right.
He picked up an Oko, a Wicked Wolf, and a Nissa in that last cycle.
Yeah, interesting thing about the Nissa here, he might want to wait a turn until he has actually the ability to protect the Nissa with that Veil of Summer in hand, or he might determine that he's behind enough on board that he can just run it out here. Even if Oscar did have a Noxious Grasp, he can attack for 3, but...
Tilt the speed a bit up. Attack.
Okay, so it looks like he's going to probably take his time on the Nissa here and wait till he has the Veil of Summer available to protect against a Veil of Summer. Or, excuse me, a Noxious Grasp.
Oh, he's taking his time all right. He's going to go for the Hydroid Krasis here. With all the extra lands that he had in hand, you got to kind of assume, or you got to kind of agree with him here, right? That if he can protect Nissa, that could be a route to victory for him going forward. Well, it looks like Oscar says, I've got all these Noxious Grasps. I'm going to go ahead and fire one off on Hydroid Krasis here, even if it is just 2-2. And Boussaud says, you know what? I'll save it.
19.
He even found another one off of that Hydroid Krasis. Now, he can't
Right.
cast it this turn, but he will still have it for when he goes for Nissa next turn. Not bad.
Yeah, this will be a nice turn here for Oscar, though. He does have a Nissa Who Shakes the World in hand, so next turn he can actually play land number 5, cast Nissa, untap Overgrown Tomb, attack, and still have the ability to cast Noxious Grasp.
Wow.
I go.
Yeah, Oscar's really benefiting from being the first one on the battlefield with these cards. Sure, there's a pair of Krasis on the other side that are getting kind of annoying, but they're not devastating. And there we go. Nissa Who Shakes the World hits the battlefield. Pluses, as you predicted, Paul, on the Overgrown Tomb. And he even has a nice attack here as well.
Yeah.
Also, both Planeswalkers just out of range of those 2 Hydroid Krasis, both at 2-2.
He's going to make a food here and likely pass, keeping up the Noxious Grasp for a potential Nissa Who Shakes the World. Can be a little less worried about a card like Veil of Summer, given that he got Eliott to use one already.
Yeah, it's funny. I think if I'm sitting in Oscar's seat, I actually think Boussaud has another one because he used it just to protect a 2-2.
Right.
Even though that wasn't the case, but now is the case.
Right.
So
But-
my read would have been wrong, but also right.
But at the same time, Boussaud is behind enough on board. This matchup is all about kind of snowballing an advantage with Planeswalkers. And again, not keeping a hand with an answer for Planeswalkers or having a Planeswalker early. I mean, this might cost them here. And
Yeah, very risky. Now, he's going to go for Oko of his own, and he's going to turn his Elk, I should say his Hydroid Krasis, into an Elk, but remember, it'll keep the +1/+1 counters while losing its ability, so it's a 5/5, and that allows him to get a clean attack in on either Planeswalker and threaten to kill it, forcing Oscar Christensen to block.
And I like this block. I think it's going to be a block before damage, go for the Noxious Grasp. Because even if Eliott does have a Veil of Summer, which he does, which is very good here, by blocking it and then doing it, he at least gets to preserve that Nissa Who Shakes the Battlefield. So now he's going to get to untap with the Nissa static. So he's going to have access to a lot of mana next turn.
Yeah, very smart there from Oscar Christensen. Nissa does take 2 damage from the flying still Hydroid Krasis. There's also a Gilded Goose to follow up, but the back-to-back Veil of Summer's doing some work here, keeping these creatures alive for Boussaud, but he really needs to get ahead, stay ahead here. Many times you can snapshot these matchups and the battlefields on them and see if somebody has an Oko and a Nissa, they usually can generate enough advantage to just win, almost regardless of what else is going on the other side.
How many cards?
Yeah, I can imagine here. I mean, Oscar has a lot of different options he can make. He can do with the Oko. He can, of course, animate a food in attack. He could also just steal Gilded Goose.
Oh, interesting.
He's got that spare food lying around. He can steal the Gilded Goose, then animate a land, and get that Oko off the battlefield.
Looks like he's got his own copy of Gilded Goose as well. And let's not forget that Nissa's ability, he does have 2 forests on the battlefield that are generating double mana right now. So he could have a lot to do here.
It's only if I next step.
Yeah.
That was Oscar being very careful. He knows how it works. He's not going to lose the mana in between, but it is always worth it to double check, especially in high pressure situations where sometimes your brain just does weird things, you know, and you just, it's like really no harm in just asking that quick question to make sure. He's going to go ahead and use the minus ability on Oko, though he stole the Hydroid Krasis on the other side rather than the Goose. Send a food token over Boussaud's way. And look at this. He's got another Oko. And he says, this is my new one.
Very crisp, precise, clean play here from Oscar.
Yeah, he's announcing what's going on as well so that there's no question. And that is a great way to play Magic.
Especially in your win-in match.
That's right. You just don't want anything ambiguous here. And there's Nissa activating once again. Now the Forest is a 3/3, and Oscar's got a very nice attack step lined up here.
Wow, look at that. I mean, he can attack for 9 here. That's a guaranteed. He will be guaranteed to kill Oko here if he attacks with all the creatures. Even if Eliott blocks, so might as well just let the Oko die.
Mm-hmm.
And he still has Noxious Grasp up with those 2 active Planeswalkers in play. Eliott is in a lot of trouble here.
Yeah, the slow start from Eliott really punishing him, even though he did find a way to kind of stay in the game, protect his stuff. He's now had a devastating turn sequence here from Christensen. Look at this board state now after this turn. That was absolutely crushing stuff there from Oscar. He is fighting it out, trying to get into the top 8 here. He's got 11-3-1 record, and if he wins this game, he's in. Boussaud now all of a sudden facing down a huge board with 2 Planeswalkers. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures plus a Gilded Goose on the back row there as well. And Boussaud just doesn't have anything going on.
Yeah, he can even turn that Hydroid Krasis with the 2 counters that he stole into a 5/5 with Oko's +1 ability.
Oh, yeah.
So many different options here. There just seems to be way too much pressure on the battlefield, and I can't really think of too many ways that Eliott can stay alive here.
Yeah, the last attack step all went to Oko, but these next ones are going to start hitting Boussaud's life total very hard. There's Nissa Who Shakes the World for Boussaud. He declined to cast that last turn. Instead, he had a couple of spells that he wanted to play. In fact, 3 as it ended up. But now he's going to run it out there, but that's 5 mana. He even had to use a food token there to cast it using the Gilded Goose.
Yeah, he
wants the untapped forests.
So now he can also play a Wicked Wolf, it looks like. He can eat the 2/2 Hydroid Krasis and then also have the Wicked Wolf as an untapped creature to block.
With a food, too.
Right.
Okay. Boussaud says, not so easy, my friend. Now, make no mistake, he is still way behind, but he is putting up a bit of a fight here.
He also has the ability to sack a food because he has access to 2 mana with that untapped forest. But Oscar also has some options here, right? He can use Oko's -5 ability to steal the forest that Eliott has on the battlefield.
Yeah, he also has a backup Oko here, too, in his hand.
Yeah, and at this point, I think Oscar just trying to figure out the best way. The thing is, if he doesn't have a lethal attack, likely what he's going to be trying to do is getting that Nissa Who Shakes the World off the battlefield. Because what is the scenario where Eliott comes back from this? it would have to probably involve a Hydroid Krasis, right? Hydroid Krasis, draw a bunch of cards, and then find maybe a few Noxious Grasps as well to try to claw back into the game. So again, if Oscar can't figure that he has a lethal attack here,
Okay, so Oscar does in fact make that exchange, but Eliott cleverly says, well, I'm going to tap my forest first for mana, and that way when you get it, it's tapped and it can't attack. Normally when you exchange a creature, it can't attack anyway because it didn't start the turn on your hand, but that land actually has haste, so it would have been able to. So Boussaud says, you don't get to use it for mana, and you don't get to attack me with it, but still another big board state hit going in Oscar Christensen's direction, and now he has another Oko Thief of Crowns to follow up as well. And he's going to turn the Wicked Wolf into an Elk and force the issue here. If Eliott wants to save it,
but it
gets tapped. And he's going to.
But he still has access to 2 mana, so he can still sack a food here because he floated the 2 mana. So he can sack the food and go up to 16. And I don't think Oscar has an attack for 16, right?
He says, do you want to go to attacks? Oh, it looks like he didn't use the mana there. So as you mentioned before, Paul, it is going to be Nissa who gets attacked. If it's not going to be lethal, he may as well make sure that Nissa's off the battlefield because, as you said, that is one of the few ways that Eliott could even conceivably claw back into this game. But now it seems as if there's no way for him to do so.
Yeah. Eliott is far too behind, and Oscar has this. Simply just needs to untap. Attack
Make
with
a
all
bunch
the
more creatures and send them in.
And we will get another person locked into the top 8 here at the Mythic Championship.
Realistically speaking, we're fighting it out here for 2 spots in our feature match area as the upper tables took a draw to get themselves into top 8. And of course, we'll be outlining that for you at the news desk. And in fact, I'll even be announcing the top 8 in just a little while here as well, live on the stream.
So next turn, Oscar has, keep in mind, those lands that he has on the right side, I mean, those are 2 additional 3/3s that Oscar can attack with. So next turn, he can have 4 lands that attack with the Nissa activation and 3 Elk as well, because he can use Oko's ability to turn that Gilded Goose into an attacker.
Boussaud, it looks like Boussaud attacked there.
Probably attacked Nissa.
Yeah. But Oscar correctly said, well, I can just block this, keep my Nissa, and just replace it with another land anyway. But this time, this way I get the Nissa as well. So he does that. But as you can see here, there is an Elk and a Goose on defense. But right now it's Elk, Elk, land, land, and potentially another land and even another Elk here from Christensen, all able to attack this turn.
Yeah. Eliott simply just has 2 blockers here. Can't gain any life.
7 attackers? 6 attackers? Yeah, this is going to be pretty rough here for Boussaud.
This is 6 attackers, so that's an attack for 18. Eliott blocks 6 of the damage, and he's going to take 12, and he's going to die.
Oscar going through the motions here as well. He tapped that Watery Grave for mana. But here it comes, the big attack now from Oscar Christensen. This is a lethal attack. And Boussaud extends the hand. Oscar Christensen is into the top 8. Congratulations, Oscar. A great run for him. And another Sultai Food making its way into the top 8. Well played, Oscar. Very clean play as you described.
Yeah,
Paul.
absolutely. Really impressed with just, clearly understands the ins and outs of this deck. Of course, playing this deck throughout the course of this tournament and also, of course, preparing for it. But yeah, just masterfully using the Okos, just using every single mana appropriately. And I think I just want to kind of go back to also just, that keep. I think it's, there's some really key elements to this matchup, and you just simply, I know the games go long, but they only go long if both of you get, the appropriate starts where you can interact with each other. If you just keep a hand that has nothing, you know, in Oko, in unchecked Oko, or acceleration into Nissa can just win the game by itself. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where, I mean, Eliott also, of course, his deck mulligan's a little bit worse because he doesn't have that Once Upon a Time. You don't get a little bit of that extra redundancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that might have cost him. You know, I think he could have given himself a slightly better opportunity there if he chose to kind of maybe look for a hand with a little more interaction.
And, you know, he actually got somewhat fortunate there because Christensen did not have that explosive start, and the game did end up going relatively long, but he found himself one step behind as a result of that slow start and was really never able to recover. Okay, let's get into Andre Strosky versus Max Mick, and they are fighting it out here at 11-3-1 for Strosky, which means if he wins, he's in. For Max Mick, he'll be 11-4, going to 12-4 with a victory and superior tiebreakers over the next competitor, which is Gregor Kowalski, who would also need to win, by the way, his round. So Max Mick looks pretty darn good to make it in here as well if he wins. So it's really a win and in for both of these players. Most likely, again, Strosky in for sure, Mick's probably in with a win. And we're coming into the middle of a huge exchange here, Paul. It looks like the Elks and the Lands are flying here for our players. Let's see how the dust settles. And we're in game 3 here, by the way.
Yeah, so just taking a look at what we see here, you know, when we started here, Strosky did have the 2 Planeswalker advantage. He had both Oko Thief of Crowns and Nissa Who Shakes the World on the battlefield. So I would guess that Andre likely slightly ahead here, but Mick Maxwell has his own Oko here to follow up, but I don't know if he has enough defense here. And again, Andre's now going to be able to untap with Nissa in play.
I mentioned it before, but if you just look and see if they have the tandem of Nissa plus Oko, that's usually the player who is significantly ahead in the game, and that could absolutely be the case here for Andre Strosky. He's the one with both of those Planeswalkers, and that's not all he has either. He's lining up some attacks. Also, this is a position where a card like Hydroid Krasis is just a blowout because of Nissa.
Yeah, looks like he hasn't found that, but he does have Ether Gust, an additional way to interact. But, you know, if he can try to get that Oko off the battlefield while still holding on to that Ether Gust, that would be ideal.
Strosky looks like he is poised to take full advantage of this board state where he is significantly ahead. He is prioritizing Oko Thief of Crowns here.
Wow, and we're going to see a chump block here on the Gilded Goose just to keep Oko alive.
Oko goes down to 2 loyalty, I think. There we go. Max Mick fighting for his life. The good news here, though, is that Strosky didn't really do much here.
Thanks. Sorry about that. You done right?
And Strosky passes the turn back to Mick, who really needs something great. Instead, I think he found another copy of Once Upon a Time. He already had one in his hand, though. And you can see he's a little bit mana short to take full advantage.
No, I think it was actually an Ether Gust. Which,
oh, you're right. It is Ether Gust.
Which might give him some time to come back here if Strosky did not have a Nissa Who Shakes the World in hand. Because what you could expect here is Maxwell to go with an Ether Gust on draw step to basically buy a turn from Nissa and all the activated abilities. And that does sound like it's a reasonable plan, but we saw already that Strosky did have a backup copy of Nissa Who Shakes the World.
Strosky's currently lining up a double chump block here against the assault from Max, presumably going at Nissa.
Yeah, that's a 4/4 Wicked Wolf. So technically, if he just lets one of his Planeswalkers take 4 from the Wicked Wolf, I mean, it's still not going to die. And the important thing is just to make sure that the Planeswalkers stay on the battlefield. The amount of loyalty is not that relevant, and Max can't really find a way to put a food into play at instant speed, so.
All right, well, Nissa took 4 damage there, down to 1. But as you mentioned, still on the battlefield, which is kind of the critical juncture there. Paradise Druid probably just going to say go here for Max, and then go for that draw step play that you mentioned before. On end step, Gilded Goose is going to make a food token for Strosky, and he's going to go to draw. And now you hear Max spring the trap. He says, on your draw step.
Oh, and he's going to go for the Oko here instead because it has a
Smart.
lot more loyalty.
Yep. Max trying to line up a multi-stage defeat of Nissa here by attacking, over the course of multiple turns. This is a very difficult mirror to play. Simic Food for both players. You don't have the answers available to you like the Sultai decks do with Noxious Grasp, but you just say, you know what, kill that, it's gone forever. You have to really leverage your board state to make this work. And as a result, it kind of looks like tug of war watching this. It's like you give a big pull and it's like, all right, I'm ahead. And by the time you pass a turn back, you're behind again, but then you get to be the one to pull back again.
So now we're going to see Strasky here. If he attacks with 2 of the 3/3s, he will be able to get that Oko off the battlefield. And, oh, he is okay giving up that Nissa that's on 2 to animate another forest and just put additional pressure here on the battlefield.
Yeah, this is kind of going all in here for Andre Strasky. He's throwing away a Nissa that had loyalty on the battlefield to get the here and the now of these extra 2 lands available, and this will give him the ability to not only kill Oko, but also take a good chunk of Max's life total.
Yeah, by doing this, he's going to be able to kill Oko and also potentially deal 6 points of damage to Max. That's going to put him down to 13, and we're looking at 4 3/3s on the battlefield, a Paradise Druid, and keep in mind, Oko, Thief of Crowns, also on top of Strasky's deck. That means 6 additional points of damage. That's going to threaten Max's life total next turn.
It just feels like it's too far behind for Max at this point to come back. He has been maneuvering this board state as best he could. There's another Paradise Druid. I think he found another Ether Gust here.
I think here we're going to, he's going to probably run another draw step Ether Gust on Nissa, who shakes the world. Can't imagine Strasky's going to bottom that one.
Effectively taking a 3/3 that would have been on the battlefield this turn away as well, plus all that additional mana benefit.
Right. And Andre probably going to use some of that mana that he has, maybe create a food with a Gilded Goose.
Yeah, that could be it. This is getting sketchy, though. Oh, does he have his own Ether Gust here?
Yeah, is he maybe lining up to see if he has some kind of lethal attack? And that's bouncing a Hydroid Krasis. So
That's gotta mean he has lethal, right? Or maybe it's just because Max only has 4 lands left that
it's not going to be that effective.
it won't be that good anyway. Fair
Right.
enough. Max did put it immediately on top of his library. And I'm assuming that Andre did, although I looked away for just half a second there.
Andre just getting very
rowdy
aggressive
here. Yeah, everything in the red zone, really forcing the issue. Max going to be tempted to use these Paradise Druids to help mitigate the losses on some level, but that's also his potential mana going away. And with Hydroid Krasis on top of his library, what is he going to do? Cast it for 2?
Yeah, now he's going to take 11, go down to 2. And then if he just plays a
locked out.
Krasis, that's gonna be it.
Yeah, and that does it. Andre Strasky wins the match and puts himself into the top 8 here in Richmond. Congratulations, Andre Strasky. Boy, he's been on a really nice run himself lately.
Yeah.
And you see he's having a quick chat there with his housemate, and maybe we'll even get a word with him. I see Tim Willoughby tapping his shoulder there too, so.
Yeah, and that's going to be a clean cut, right? Strasky, the only way that Kowalski would have had a chance of making the top 8 is if Max won his match.
Exactly.
Right? And now we're going to have a clean top 8.
Yeah, we're going to have a clean cut for the top 8. It looks like from here, we were kind of running the numbers coming into the round. Of course, we leave most of that to Rich at the desk and to our scorekeepers and such. But yeah, I mean, it looked like coming in, that's how things were going to go. Andre in with a win, which he got, and then a clean win in on our main match. And that one went to Oscar Christensen, who made it in as well. And it looks like we're going to have a clean cut here in Richmond.
Yeah, and one thing that we just saw kind of in both those matches, I know we only saw a brief glimpse of what happened in Strasky's match, but the matchup is almost all about the Planeswalkers. And
Yes.
whoever gets to stick one and get more activations is the one who's going to come out on top. And like you said, it's that tug of war because I play my Planeswalker, animate my creatures, attack with everything just to get your Planeswalker off the battlefield. But what typically ends up happening then is all your creatures are tapped, so guess what?
Yes.
I play my Planeswalker, untap all my things, attack with everything, and it just keeps going back and forth
Yes.
until finally somebody is out of the Planeswalker.
It's true. And it's interesting because one of the things that you noted earlier in our other match was, you know, that you want to keep hands that interact with or have Planeswalkers ideally. And the reason for that is if you don't have one of those, you don't even get to pick up the rope.
Right.
Because it just gets pulled away from you
Like,
and all
this
of a
is
sudden
my
you get
game.
ran over. Yeah.
I just win. basically.
Yeah. I mean, like, because when you're getting beaten down by that deck, you know, you think, I wish they were attacking my Planeswalkers and not my life total, which is plummeting very, very quickly. So, yeah, so that is it, though, for round number 16. And again, we had Oscar Christensen picking up his match, Andre Strosky picking up his match as well, and theoretically, very likely putting themselves into the top 8. Things are shaping up pretty cool down the stretch here as well. It looks like we're going to have a pair of adventure decks getting into the top 8, and they are going to be in potentially a hostile environment, although one that they would have expected coming in because it looks like the rest of the decks will be Oko.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, coming into this tournament, you had to have expected to play against all these food decks. And, you know, Andrew Cuneo has just been kind of blasting away the competition with that Selesnya deck, just playing it extremely well and just realizing that the strategy to preserve Edgewall Innkeeper and go wide with Martian of Multitudes could be the recipe for success against all these food decks.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to have Rich and Maria at the news desk to bring you all the news that's happened here in this round, and we'll have the top 8 announcement. Don't go anywhere.